I want to thank you all for being here this evening. Today is Tuesday, September 18th, and it is 6:34 p.m., and we'd like to call the Public Safety Committee meeting to order. If I can please have a moment of silent meditation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, may I please have roll call?
Roll call, Mayor Cubillos.
Here.
Councilperson Roman.
Here.
Vice Mayor Nickerson.
Here.
Also present for the record, Janice Jacoby, Village Clerk, Cristia Lu, Village Manager, Interim Village Attorney Norman Powell, Interim Chief Huff Nagel.
Okay, great. May I get before I ask for approval of the agenda, I'm gonna just make one shift real quick here. Alrighty, so F9 tracking report, I'm actually gonna take that out since the agenda is pretty packed and we have many meetings tonight. I'm just gonna pick out two line items from the tracking report. One that is already on there, which is Horace Mann. And then I'm going to add in the bottom, so it would be 1, 2. And actually where it says F4 part-timers, I'm moving that to the bottom. So it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So F8 is going to be item 8 from the tracking agenda, which is police schedule. And F9 is going to be part-timers. I moved it like that because the first 7 topics will move pretty quickly. It's the last 2 that we'll spend the most time with. So if I get a motion to approve the agenda where I have striked out the tracking report and I moved to the bottom where F8 is going to be item 8 from the tracking agenda, which is police schedule, and F9 is part-timers.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Motion's been made by Vice Mayor Nickerson to approve the agenda with the amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Councilperson Roman. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, hearing none, the agenda passes with the amendment. At this time, is there a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting of May 1st? Actually, we need to table that because we did not get the minutes
Yes.
from May 1st. Okay, we're gonna go right into the agenda items. The first one we have is Lochman Park. I'm not sure if most of you know, I know the committee, Lochman Park is on the south side of the Little River. And several years ago, I met with the head of Northside, or the Intercoastal, which oversees that area as far as when anything happens in the river, or you all hear gunshots over here. The county is the one that's supposed to respond. So a couple of years ago, I met with I requested the manager at the time to set up a meeting. But since then, the area deputy director, Mr. Patterson, is no longer there. So I've asked the interim chief and the manager to set up a meeting, which I know we have a couple of dates, but before we actually set a date, do we know who replaced Patterson? I don't think that answer has been answered. I've sent out a few emails, and that question has not been answered just yet. Because I want to be sure that if we're going to have a meeting, that he is there, because when we had this meeting last time with the former manager and police officers, Patterson was there, so I want to know if his replacement is going to be there.
Good evening. On the email that I sent out on September the 4th, I did state that the individuals that I spoke to, which was the Captain Chapman and Major Cutting, is available for whatever date that I had given you there to choose from, whatever time.
Yes, but who replaced Patterson? I got that email. So who replaced Deputy Patterson when he retired?
The individual for that area, the individual that's responsible for that area is the captain and the major.
So one of them replaced Patterson?
They were responsible for that area.
So did they replace Patterson?
The question was to to me that I asked them was, who is taking charge of Forest, Larchmont? And they said it was the mayor.
Okay, so when you set up a meeting, can you reply back in an email, put the manager and I in copy, and ask who replaced Patterson, and we'd like him at that meeting as well, him or her? Okay. Anything else on Lodgman Park, Christia?
No.
Okay.
Just setting up the meeting. and-
Yeah, we need to reconnect because, that's one item that comes and goes with the residents when there's complaints of gunshots on the other side and the response time is low. So if we can get who replaced Patterson and get a few dates in October, because the dates in September weren't good for me.
Okay, so you want me to move them to October? Because I gave September 10th, 11th, 17th, and 18th. were the
Well, those
dates
are
that I
passed.
gave.
Yeah,
So now you want me
for
to-
October.
For October.
With the replacement of Deputy Patterson, please. Okay, during the, F2 is the MOU, which is a memorandum of understanding. During the Tim Mayer case, I had asked, I believe, Chief Huffnagel for a copy of the MOU, which at that time, I don't think we knew where it was. And the reason I wanted a copy was because, we have an agreement with the county that whenever there is, whenever we need their assistance, obviously they come in and assist. But long story short, that's when that came up. So we've gotten a copy of the MOU. What I'd like to see now is, that was done 3 years ago. What I've asked Christia and the attorney is to review it, to see if there's anything in there that perhaps maybe we need to update, change, anything that we need to do to ensure that we capitalize on any opportunity. I say that to say that after the experience we had with the case with, the unfortunate case with Tim Mayer, I think that we need to be sure that we are prepared in the event that anything like that should happen again. I was here for a few days and, it was a bit overwhelming. So, I say that to say that I'd like to know if you guys can take a look at it in the next 30 to 60 days and, come up with recommendations, or if you think that it is, sufficient or anything of the nature, and the signatures need to be updated anyway, because it's the former manager and it's the former chief and all that. So if you all can get that back to us in the next 30 to 60 days, that would be, yes.
On the email that I sent you, the manager, it says, who the commander is. It says Janet Lewis.
Okay. Speak loud.
Can you hear me now?
You gotta talk louder, because it's not
Janet
this.
Lewis.
Okay.
She is the commander, she's the one that's in charge of legal. And she would be, she's the one that provided me the MOU.
And which draws me to the point where, and that's why I really asked for a copy, because when I was here that Sunday, and we didn't know where it was. So, and which draws me to the next point, which I asked the manager on Friday, I am sure that we have MOUs with other municipalities. So and I'm sure we have one with Miami Shores, I'm sure we have one with North Bay Village, and I'm sure we have one with Biscayne Park, is that correct?
Correct.
Where are they?
They're filed.
Okay, so do you have them readily available?
I would have to, yeah, I would have to get them filed.
Because you didn't have the county one readily available.
The county one was asked to me, that specific day, on a Monday, and I just reached out to legal, and they emailed it and sent it to me.
Okay,
And I
but
scanned it.
but if we have a mutual aid, we need to have those copies here.
Right.
And not only do we need to have them here, the clerk needs to have them.
Absolutely.
So all of the mutual aids that we have with every police department, the clerk needs to have a copy, but more importantly, we should not be calling another department, we should have that here.
Right.
And that's what prompted me to ask when I realized that we didn't know where it was and it wasn't here. And when we're dealing with a situation like what we were dealing with, I think it's important that we make sure that anything that we have is, whether it's a mutual aid, whether it's a memorandum of understanding, whatever the case may be, it needs to be in our office.
Absolutely. We will work on getting that this week,
Okay.
getting all of them.
Any questions from the committee on the MOUs?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Number 3, which is, town halls and meetings. Several years ago, the council had made we had asked for, in lieu of sort of like, what was going on, in today's world, the council had agreed that we would, always have a police officer at every meeting.
Yes.
So, and that was, pretty much it. And for the most part, we do, whether it's a meeting, whether it's a town hall, whether it's, an event, present. However, what I would like to do, Norman, is actually put it in the format of a resolution. And I say that because it just creates sort of a standard operating procedure, so that needs to be a constant reminder that there's something going on. So if the police officer or the chief sees it on the calendar, it's an automatic given that they need to have a police officer there. And it's not expected that it always has to be the chief. There should be a designated officer, whatever that officer is. So no hurry. If we can have it for the October meeting, it's fine, because September we have a full meeting. Whether on the October or November meeting, if we can put a resolution together that the council will read and vote on, as far as sort of an understanding.
Yeah, if I may, the proposed procedures that we were working on includes a section calling for a sergeant at arms. I don't
That's
know
right, it
whether-
does.
I don't know whether we're going to take that up tonight, but we've
That's
been
right, it
working
does.
on
That's right,
working
it does.
shop that's it's already.
Okay,
in there.
perfect. Okay, perfect. Okay. Where am I at now? F4. Okay, F4 is Horace Mann, correct?
Yes.
There was a meeting on September 4th, and I believe you were there. What happened at that meeting at Horace Mann, at ESAC meeting?
We did our regular monthly meeting, and we just go over as to what they proposed and what they want to do with the teachers and, the budget, what it is that it gets passed. That was basically it that we had. And
You know,
welcoming everybody for the meeting.
I know that we had a meeting today with the principal, and we had a meeting with regards to the septic to sewer and the nature trail, I believe. I'm asking because Horace Mann has always been on the track and report, and historically I've seen, either you or predominantly you, not Sharp, goes. And we need to determine the value of going and what's happening and coming from it. Because what we're getting back from Principal Lawrence is nothing, that we're not contributing in any way or adding value. So I say that to say that we really need to take a look at the time that we're spending there at ESAC, and what are we coming up with to be able to do with the kids now that the school year has started. Last year was a little different because we ran into Irma as the school year started, but when we are going to the meetings, there needs to be something that either we're working on together, whether it's, several years ago, we tried doing the Junior Explorer program, while we had another officer here. But the reason we're there is because it's to build community. The reason we're there is to bridge the gap with the residents, the community, and the school. And if we're getting feedback from the principal that that's not happening, not necessarily at that meeting per se, but in general. So we need to take a look at reorganize what our purpose is going to that meeting, and restructure it in a format where, because that's really why we're there. We're there to be able to be a partner with the school, to build the community together. So I'd like to know how you're gonna work that out, whether it's you, I don't know if it's you going, I think predominantly it's you. Something I had thought was, we have a police officer, Newman. Newman is a part-timer, and Newman also works at an after-school with kids at his regular job. And I've seen in the schedule, as I was looking at the schedule, that he actually works 5 to 10, sometimes on Wednesdays. I mean, it may behoove us that maybe add him to the ESAC board, because he's a young officer, he works for kids already. Maybe, he wants to be a part of adding a program with the kids or something like that, but we need to decide where that's going, because that's an hour, I think it's the first Wednesday of the month, that the principal's not seeing the value as far as what we're contributing. So if we can re-look at that, and see what we can add to that. And,
Did the principal mention or give ideas as to his expectations of what he would like to see?
In your meeting?
would you like to go through what some of the things that the principal has,
Yes.
said he would like to see from the village? And aside from that, there's others as far as, you know, the police officers. And I go back to the Junior Explorer program because while perhaps it wasn't initiated the way we would have liked to, but I think it was something that the kids really liked. It just fell through and the police officer left that was doing it.
Well, I don't know what happens at the ESAC meeting, but I would like to sit with you so we can define the role that the village is playing, you're playing, or if we assign Officer Newman to that task, then we need to formalize our attendance and participation in that way, because that is an opportunity to show that we are partnering. I did meet with Principal Lawrence and Regional Superintendent John, what's his last name here? Pace. This afternoon for 2.5 hours, we talked about the past, the present, and the future, and ways that we can partner and ways to make the school feel that we are being, that we're open to partnership. And a lot of that is that school attendance from village residents is very low, or that they aren't enrolled in the school. Now, that isn't something that is the village's, you know, responsibility, but there is a way for us to maybe do some events or activities with the school that would bring the community to the school so that it is open and you can see the school. Maybe, you know, when your children are middle school aged, they would attend that school. And the school is doing better as years are going by. They're getting better grades and having more programs that would be, you know, beneficial to our students here. So they're trying to change their perception, or the perception in the community of the school, and they want us to partner with them in that way. They also would like to see more of the elected officials present to, you know, invite them to speak, which we do, and we've been doing that, but just events. So I did commit that when we do have events, we will include them. We have missed a couple of opportunities, so we need to work on that. Their graduation ceremony, you provided, you were a speaker at their graduation, and they would like to see more from us with the graduation in terms of caps and gowns, maybe, or just in some way. We can't commit a dollar amount because, you know, we are on a very small budget as well, but there are partnership opportunities and there are things that we can do, and certainly some of our council persons can or may want to provide a little bit of their discretionary funds to help out with some of the programs that they have at the school. So those are some of the things we discussed, and we will get back to them because we still haven't made decisions about the land use yet.
I think it's a key opportunity that if we're already, if a police officer's already going to that meeting,
Yes.
to connect the two dots so that it is a more of a productive time spent there.
Okay, so, there was nothing mentioned regarding, partnership with our police department. I mean, I think that's kind of, since we're at public safety, that's, pretty much the direction, because it was being discussed, with the chief, then I would like to know if that was brought up.
No, this wasn't an ESAC meeting, so I don't know what happens in that, so we really will need to see in what way, you know, that we have a presence at that meeting.
And the ESAC meeting, he was not present, so that was never brought up.
Okay, got it.
But if he's not there, his AP is there, and if the AP's not there, the report goes back to him anyway. So even if he's not there, we still need to have some kind of agenda where we're connecting the dots. If it doesn't feel like there's a partnership or a community, that's a prime opportunity where if we're going once a month already, then let's maximize it by letting them know, hey, this is what we're gonna work on, and this is how we can work on things together and things like that.
I'm sorry, I did forget one point. He did say that if perhaps one of our officers could get out some of the car and come and walk around a little bit on the grounds with them from time to time, just to show their faces, and, you know, but in that way, that would be a good relationship if they, you know, but that's the only mention of police, because we were mostly talking about land use and money.
I just think that if you all can come back with what you want to present to us, that we're going to start doing as we move forward, so that we can use that time that you're already there or a police officer is already there.
Yeah.
Anything else from the committee? I'm going to the next one, customer service. In the last couple of weeks or months, I've had to either text or email the manager with regards to complaints, and whether it's a part-timer or a full-timer. And one happened just recently last week. And as a result of that, it prompted me to remind the manager that while you all go to different trainings, I think customer service, I think you all had a training here in the administration for EOC, but I think bringing in a customer service training would go a long way for not only the administration, but for the police department. I think that we are a really small community, and we pride ourselves in being community-driven, and part of being community-driven is customer service, being not being so abrupt when there's really not that much going on. So if we can find the customer service training that maybe could come here and provide some type of updated training, I think, when was the last time, or has the police department in the time that you've been here ever received that type of training? So let's see if we can work on something and find something,
Okay.
okay?
Just to touch, because when the village manager, when the principal asked about the officer going on, just to, let everybody know that the officers do go in the morning
Yes.
for the early release and also in the afternoon. We're there so that they can clear the streets and, go on their merry ways and go to school and clear the footbridge. The officers are there in the morning time and in the afternoon.
But I think what the manager was saying, I agree, because when I'm leaving there to go to work, I see it. But as the manager said, it's getting out of the car and being present on foot. A lot of the times they're there, but they're in the car with the windows up, so it's not as approachable for the kids.
He was just saying to show, face, and so that the kids
Going
and
in the grounds, because when they're going in, if the officers are out, especially when they're leaving school, we're out there making sure that they don't park across the street, and making sure that they actually clear, especially the footbridge, that they go over to their side. But the actual inside the grounds, no, we can't do that. We never actually walk the grounds.
No, I don't say walk the grounds. For example, the cars are usually parked parallel to my house, and then there's another one parallel, usually right in front. It's usually just get out of those cars. I don't know what happens all the way to the footbridge, but I do see a police officer there. But if they're in the car, I think that's what he means.
Yes.
Actually, and not necessarily walk on the
Right,
grounds
but
of
see
the school, but you can walk on the sidewalk. I mean, there's so much going on in dismissal and in the morning. I think that's more of what
that's what he meant. No,
Okay.
not to walk through the grounds,
Yeah.
but just to be seen, like the
Right.
actual officer, so they can recognize the faces and get to know the officers.
Not only would it promote the traffic to slow down just a little bit. Yes, Councilperson
So
Roman.
what I'm hearing is that it's more of a, building community with the students in the school, so that, it doesn't look like we're just sitting in cars, in the AC, just kind of, we're out there and actually, saying hello or goodbye or speaking to. So I think that that's probably what he's looking for.
Helping out, his school resource officer, since he's the only one there, the office, especially in the afternoon. We get out of the cars to help them, but the traffic is going to be like.
So if we could just be more consistent with it.
Yeah, because if he's bringing it up, then he's not seeing it or he's not hearing it. Okay, so you're gonna get back to us on what you all are gonna come up with as far as a strategy.
In fact, I'll do that
and-
very sooner than later, because I want to give them a proposal soon so that we can move forward with the
Okay.
easement, because we got a deadline on that too.
Okay. I think we can tie that all in together.
Yes.
Where am I at? Customer service. Okay, the next one is update. We have 3 part-time candidates that are, I know one is gonna be sworn in at the next council meeting, correct? That's Mr. Martinez?
Correct.
And then we have 2 that are in the, waiting wings, waiting for some,
Well, actually,
clearance.
On Sunday, I did send the city manager a new update. Mr. Martinez is available to come today and get sworn in. And he has completed everything. And then Mr. Rigo has also completed everything, so he's ready also to get sworn in. I have, Mr. Harris, who's just doing one course that he needs to complete. And I also have a young lady that's also put in an application that we need to set an appointment, because she knows she can come in and do an oral. And I sent out that email on the 16th.
Okay, so we have one that's gonna be sworn in on next Tuesday, Mr. Martinez.
We actually can have 2.
Who's the second one?
Mr. Regal.
Me- Former Officer Regal from here. Okay. What do we got next? Okay, when we last met, we also discussed about being active at the Miami-Dade College campus, with actually, knowing when their classes are gonna start there, and having solidified, maybe when they have the career fair and actually being present. So I know that we missed the boat in the August class, and I think you have the dates already for the upcoming class. Just when those dates are set, just let me know in an email. And if I can make it, I'll pop in if you guys are gonna be there in a career fair. But I think it's important that we are, prevalent and visible, and I know the concern is FTO, and I get that, but it takes time to have officers come in. So I think that if we're there and we're literally a neighboring city, that we should be involved when they have career fairs.
Yes, I agree.
So just, but give me some notice, let me know, and if the committee wants to go as well, let them know.
Okay.
Okay, so it leads me to, the last two items, which I'm gonna it's gonna get tied in together a little bit. Police schedule, which is on the track and report as I think item 8. So, about maybe earlier this year, and in the last year, we have had, the opportunity to hire, a few police officers. And, we hired Benitez in August. We hired Battaglia in December, and we hired we hired V in March, and we hired Riveron probably in May. And when after we hired Battaglia, we were about to bring on V. I met with you and the interim chief, and I was really concerned about the schedule. And I said at that meeting that I wanted to receive a recommendation because when I looked at the schedule and I compared it to the entire year from last July to then February, and now I've compared it to August, actually September, too much has changed. The first point that I'm gonna bring up, and I'm gonna bring up a few of these, and you can answer them as to why that change happened, or I'm gonna want you all to go back to the drawing board and come up with a schedule that I believe would be best suited for the village. And I'm gonna get to a couple of points. So, back in July, when we had an interview board, and I don't think you were here yet, we had 5 candidates that were coming in to interview. And I believe it was Officer Rojas, Officer Boisno, Officer Newman, Officer Battaglia, and Officer Benitez. Putting a panel together to interview was something that we incorporated a couple of years ago. At that interview, all the candidates were great, but the top 2 candidates were Battaglia and Benitez. And at that meeting, one of the things that you said, and I believe it was a PBA rep said, that we opted with Benitez because he was seasoned and mature, and the shift that we were hiring for was the overnight shift, which was, I think at that time, that's changed a little too, that was like 10 to 8. So we hired, Benitez was made the job offer, and he was hired. What's happened is Benitez has been working that shift till July 12th, to January 12th. And Officer Battaglia was hired 4 months later in December. And in January 13th, Officer Battaglia was given the evening shift. But 4 months before that, we said he wasn't ready for that shift. So I'm gonna get back to that. So that has me a little concerned, because if we said in July of 2017 that we believed that he needed a little more training, but yet we put him in the evening shift 4 months later, I would like to know, did anything happen from August to December in terms of training that by the time he was hired, we felt that it was okay to give Benitez a day shift and Battaglia an evening shift? That's a question.
Well, I don't know the answer to that because that was decisions made before I came on board. And so when I did interview Officer Battaglia to make him a full-timer, I wasn't aware that there was any concern about the schedule and him being green, so I didn't know about this. But if you could maybe talk about that, interim chief?
Let's say today I decide to, hire an officer, he's a junior officer. We put our shift in, and it goes by seniority. And we go by the first officer, has the most seniority, takes the shift, the second officer, and goes down the line. If we're talking about Officer Batavia right now, he chose to stay on midnight because there's a 5% differential that comes in. So if the shift comes up again and he chooses to stay in, unless the senior officer bumps him, he'll continue staying on.
So I guess, I'm gonna get back to that one. So then, during that time in January, we used to have a shift that Blackwood worked, and it was 6 PM to 4 AM. It was a swing shift. That shift changed to 6 AM to 4 PM. Why?
I don't know.
Right now, if we hire another individual, then we would make a swing shift. We would have to.
Yeah, but you're not hearing me. So, one of the things we get from residents all the time is a lack of police presence at night, and there's gotta be more than one. When I look at the schedule, I see 3 police officers to 4 during the day. You're wrinkling your eyes. Would you like me to give you an example? Because I can. Because my thing is, why would we have 4 officers during the day and 1 by himself all night? That's what I mean,
We don't have 4 officers.
okay. Would you like me to cite 2 samples? Because I will. Okay.
Look at the schedule.
So if we look at September, because I can go as far back, and I actually, what I did bring is I brought a schedule from July of last year. When you look at July of last year, the schedule was a little different. So let me give you an example, Wednesdays. And I know you're gonna tell me it's the day that all your police officers are here, right?
Right.
But when you have 4 police officers coming in at 11 AM and leaving at 9 PM, and then you have 1 officer at 6 AM to 4 PM, and then you have Officer Battaglia from 9 PM to 7 AM. Now, I know you're gonna say that it's Wednesday and they all need to be here, but a year ago, that wasn't necessarily the case. A year ago, on a Wednesday, you'd have an officer come in at 8, 1 at 5, 1 at 3, 1 at 10, 1 at 10, and 1 at 12, which provide overlapping through the whole day and well into the evening.
Wednesday is the only day that we overlap. That's the only day throughout the 7 days. We have because we work 10-hour shifts 4 days.
But you have on Wednesday 4 police officers coming in at 11 AM and leaving at 9. That's not an overlap, that's exact shift.
That's the only day that you're gonna have all of us here except 1 officer.
I know, I'm just using example, Wednesday as an example, but why would, I'm thinking of what's best for the village. I'm thinking of when the residents complain that there's not enough police officers during the time frame. If you take a look at the schedule, and I'm comparing it to one from last year, like Wednesdays would look like, you had an officer that came in at 8, left at 6, you had one that came in at 5 PM, left at 3 AM, you have one that came in at 3 PM and left at 1 AM, one that came in at 10 PM and left at 8 AM, and one that came in at midday and left at 10.
Because at that time,
That's-
in 2017, we had more officers.
No, that's incorrect, because, you had Santos, Burrell, Rigo, Huffnagel, Blackwood, and Sharp, that's 6. And right now we have Sharp, Riveron, Burrell, Racamar, Benitez, Battaglia, that's 6. It's exactly the same. I'm comparing apples to apples.
Me and that was back then, I was included on the schedule. Now I'm not included on the schedule.
I know, with you, it's 7. I'm looking at 6 without Morales, I'm looking at 6 without you. Right now you have Sharp, Riveron, Burrell, Racamar, Benitez, and Battaglia, don't they all work here, right? 6? Yeah, so we have 6 officers. It's the same exact amount. I made it a point to compare the exact same thing. So what I'm trying to say, Wednesday's just one example. But my thing is, if we have the opportunity and Wednesday is a day, and we all know that Wednesday through Saturday are the days that we are the busiest, then we take it day by day, because I am gonna get to another day that's not Wednesday. Why don't we take, has Sharp ever worked at Battaglia at night?
Sharp works on the other side of the street.
But on Wednesday, he could work 9 to 7 with Battaglia, because he's working 11 to 9, because it's a day you all overlap.
Right, on Wednesdays, the way they go.
So if you have a junior officer that's been working by himself since January of 13, has any senior officer worked with him at night?
And the history of Battaglia.
But I'm not asking for the history, I'm asking since January with Officer Battaglia. Okay, but we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to have 2 officers overnight on a Wednesday. No?
Works on the other side of the shift. Remember, it's 7 days a week.
Okay, Sharp works Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Battaglia works Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Okay, so they work Wednesday in the same day. So what I'm trying to say is, when residents ask for officers to work together, especially at night, if we can't accommodate some days, we need to be considering that, and we're not. And I'm using one case, and that is Wednesdays. Wednesdays, you have 4 officers coming in at 11. You have Benitez coming in at 6 a.m. You have Battaglia that comes in at 9, completely by himself. And I haven't even gotten to Officer Juarez, who's a part-time, that for a year and a half, he gets in at 8 o'clock that same day. So technically, you have 6 officers here that day, in the morning.
On Wednesday, the reason Officer Juarez comes in is because he takes care of my feet. So that's the reason.
I understand, but Christia, we need to look at this.
No, I
Because
agree.
right now, you have 6 police officers in the morning, and you have 1 at night.
Well, I think we do need to revisit the schedule. You've asked, we've gone through it, but
And the only reason I'm bringing this to committee is because I've brought this up a
No, I know.
lot.
We have talked.
And I said last week, I said, I've brought this up a lot, I've been asking since February, where are we at with it? And I said, I told the manager I'm bringing it to the committee, because when I take a look at Wednesday's just one example. But there are other days where this could definitely be taken a look at, and it's not.
Wednesday is the only day because we overlap. That's the only day.
I know,
We have morning, afternoon, and midnight.
I know,
shift. We have noon shift.
okay, but what, if we have an opportunity for one day to have 2 police officers overnight, and that's the best thing for the village, we should do it. That's number 1, but we're gonna go into another day. And it goes on for Saturday. If you look at Saturday, on Saturday, you have 3 police officers in the morning. You have, Benitez, you have Rakashar, and then you have a part-timer. If we have a part-timer that can come in 5 to 10. Okay, you're talking out of line, I'm talking over here to the manager. I'm using it as an example from the schedule. And if anybody wants a copy of the schedule right here, I'm just picking a day.
But if you let me explain.
Explain,
Madam Mayor,
explain.
we have, like, my officers are out there, can actually also show you Benitez. We're gonna use Benitez. Benitez comes in the morning shift.
6 a.m. to 4.
6 to 4. Afternoon comes in, that's Officer B. Officer Burrell, because they both work together on that side of the shift. Officer Burrell comes in at 11 to 9. From 4 to 9, Officer Burrell is by himself. From 6 in the morning until 11, Officer Benitez is by himself. So then, the next shift comes in, which is the midnight shift. So there's only a few hours that they overlap each other, but there are 4 to 5 hours that they're by themselves.
I know that, but what I'm trying to say is that the overlap is always during the day. That's what I've been saying. You're talking about Benitez being alone for 4 hours and Rakamar being, V being alone as well. But then when you have an evening officer on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday alone, 9 p.m. to 7 for the most part, on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Okay.
When it doesn't have to be like that all the time, because if you have to make a choice to have an officer by itself, we never want that choice. But the daytime is more inclined to be a little safer than it is in the evening. So if you have the opportunity for an officer to come in a little later and stay later, that there's an option there. But right now, the shifts have dramatically changed where that's not happening. So,
What you're reading is inaccurate.
so,
We need, if you want us to be able to have 2 officers per shift, we need more officers.
no, hold on, I'm gonna bring up the residents afterwards. So, what I'm trying to say here is when I compare the shifts from last year to this year, what I'm gonna ask is because I have it all here and it's not the same. There's been way too many shifts that have changed where there's more coverage during the day than there is at night. At night, consistently, you have one police officer that is by himself on the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday shift.
On the-
Consistently.
Okay.
And when I take a look at the other side, or actually when I take a look at the whole side, the daytime, you have more officers working. And when I compared it, and I'm gonna make sure that you have copies of all
Yes.
this, because in the realities, what I'd like to see is you all sit down and come up with something, because I do believe that there could be something better. I
Okay.
know that more officers or more officers is the answer, and we know that. But just like we all have to work within what we have, you know,
Right.
what can we do that's a little better while we're trying to work to get more officers?
Right.
But that's not, I mean, it's not happening. And all you have to do is sit here and look at it over and over and over. It's not like that. And I can continue going on and citing different cases that are not Wednesdays, where you have an overlap of officers all day, but you don't have any in the evening. You have what?
We have the swing shift, which on October 1st, we're gonna be hiring another officer. We are gonna be putting in the swing shift. We'll be able to somewhat help out the overlapping, because there's still 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. One side of the shift is not gonna have 2 officers on midnight, but the other side will. And then still not guaranteed, because if that officer calls out sick, then it still needs to be one. If that officer has to go to training or takes vacation, it still needs to be one.
I do believe that there's always a way, but that's where you come in. And next week, you have 2 officers working the evenings. You have Riverone and you have Sharp starting next week, or the 22nd, whenever that is. So I say that to say, well, unless the schedule is wrong, the schedule I'm looking at, you have Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, you have Riverone and Sharp working 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. together. And I know he's recently done with FTO. But what I'm trying to say, if you can make it work for 1 week here and there, we should be able to offer this. And I don't think that it is being offered the way that it could be. I do believe that the schedules have changed and the shifts have changed where there's more coverage during the day. Because when I take a look at a shift that used to start at 6 p.m. to 4, but then it went to 4 p.m. to 2 a.m., you've got less coverage at night.
That was the swing shift when Officer Bachman was here. He's no longer here. Remember, every time an officer left, we keep losing officers and we are replacing the officers. We're not adding more additional officers. We're just replacing what we're losing.
So-
So we're down an officer right now.
But if we replace Officer Blackwood, it didn't get replaced with the same schedule. He used to work you just said it, he worked 6 p.m. to 4 a.m., which he did, and he was replaced. And when he was replaced, that shift went away.
Right.
So, I say that to say that, I have brought this up sufficient times, and I really don't find it funny at all, because this is really serious, because everybody out there they're agreeing with more officers, and we know that, but we need to also see, when I take a look at this, which I'll make sure that everybody else has, and you compare it, I mean, unless the schedules I'm looking at are inaccurate, but I've compared the schedule from last July all the way to now. And there is definitely no continuity, there's a lot of, this, and, when I looked at the schedules from last year, I have March and I have April and I have June, the schedule was, there was much more of a layout, and there was 2 officers all over the place, which is gonna lead me to my next point, and that is the part-timers. I spoke to the manager, and I believe I mentioned it to the chief, and that was the threshold for the part-timers, you increased it from 20 to 25 hours. All right. And then, do they have a certain shift that they must work?
No.
Or they're open? Okay. One of the recommendations I had made to the manager, based on what I had received or heard from other municipalities, is that right now, since we are short, and when you've known that the part-timers have been the backbone of our department. I mean, last year we had 20, and this year we have 10. They covered a lot of shifts. So I say that to say that if we can take out the threshold of the 25 hours, so that if you know, right now we're asking them to work to come in for free for 20 hours, right?
They come in for 20, I went ahead and looked, and it used to be 20, and I went ahead to be able
25.
to get more manpower out here, because even with the 20, it's not enough. I went ahead and said 25. Okay, if for some reason, as an incentive, I told them, if you come out on the times that we need you, then instead of 25, you do 20. If you can't come out on the times that we need you, then go ahead and come out 25. To try to bring in more manpower out here, using the part-time.
But wouldn't they, I mean, if you already work 30, 40, 50 hours a week and you have to come volunteer 20 hours, you're probably not inclined to do it, because you're already exhausted. If in the interim, while we're in the phase of needing more help out there, more police officers, I mean, there's no law that they must do a minimum of 20 or 25 hours. That's something that we implement, correct?
Right. And I spoke with the interim chief about that. I think that is a good incentive to get more part-timers. I spoke with the interim chief about that, and I think we're gonna be moving forward with that policy. We also increased the hourly rate for the part-timers
Yeah,
so
we
that
did.
we can be more attractive as well.
But she looks
So-
confused.
Just to make it clear, so what you're saying is just get rid of the donated hours?
We're,
Have them come in and donate hours?
well, they can, you and I discussed this, where they could donate, or if they wanted to work more, they could get paid.
And
But,
we've had officers that we went ahead and told them, if you can come in and you work 30 hours a week, we will pay you for those shifts, and at the same time, you get benefits. So coming as an incentive for them to come, and they were getting health benefits and a part of the FRS also. That was also out there, given out to them, told if you come out 30 hours a week.
Yeah, no,
it
yeah,
has to be consistent.
Yeah.
It can't be 30 hours here and then 2 months later another 30 hours, then that's the benefit that you get. That was another incentive that was given.
So yeah, we did that a year ago, but have we recently, and again, this is only to cover, gaps where we need them, because again, when I take a look at the schedule, the way it was last year, a lot of the gaps were filled in when Officer Battaglia was a part-timer, when Officer Benitez was a part-timer. When I take a look what the schedule looked like, when they were part-timers, they filled in a lot of the gaps that we had in the full-time schedule. So while we're getting through this, if there's a way that we can lower that threshold, I mean, I'd like to know what the committee has to say, but it's just a recommendation, because when I take a look at your reserve officers, there's really not that many. And going to my next point, when I hear that they don't want to, they're not available, but yet they do a lot of off-duty, I mean, there's gotta be a balance there. There's gotta be, there's, you know, when they go to off-duty, they're using our badge. So, I say that they should be working here as well.
And they do, the individuals that are doing off duties, which Officer Sandy Owens, he works donates and works paid shift also. Officer Newman, the same thing, he works donated shift, he doesn't work for any pay here, but he does a few here and there off duty.
Again, so what I'd like, again, I don't know if lowering is the threshold, if the committee wants to, opinion on that.
So may I ask a question?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So I'm understanding that our threshold has been raised to 25 hours, is that correct? Okay, so that means that they have to donate 5 additional hours from what they were required to before. And now we have less part-timers. So I think where the mayor's going, my question would be, because we've raised we've increased it an additional 5 hours, is that a deterrent? Is that keeping people from coming and wanting to put in, instead of 20, now they have to put 25 hours, which is an additional 5 hours?
Actually, it's actually helped the cause, because then they realize, okay, instead of doing 25, let me come in on the times that the department needs us, and we only have to do 20. they, every single one of them have been keeping their times, and they have been doing the 20 hours throughout the month, every single one.
So the 10 that we have are doing 20 hours, and they're getting paid hours as well.
No,
They're just doing their 20 hours. So why do you think, in your opinion, that we have gone from 20 to 10 this year? Part-timers.
We lost a few part-timers that did not want to come out and do 20 hours, that were basically would come whenever they wanted. And when I started implementing and telling them, okay, I'm not gonna come, you're not gonna come out here on a Wednesday when I have all the officers. No, you're gonna tell me, here's the schedule, you tell me when you can come. If I see that there's 3 part-timers going in on a Monday, no, I don't need 3 part-timers. Okay, because I have, you know, a full-timer come in on a Monday, I don't need all 3 of you. You guys choose other days that you can come in.
So if I'm sorry to interrupt you, just to try to get through this. So if I'm understanding correct, you're saying that the additional 10 that we had weren't really part-timers that were showing up for 20 hours. They were actually coming in for an hour here and there just to keep their badge. So now, by instituting the 25 hours or 20, and then this has improved, and you basically have part-timers that are actually showing up.
Correct.
Okay. So in your opinion, the 25 has
Has helped.
Helped.
The city, because
Okay.
that's an incentive for them. Instead of doing 25, we'll do 20.
Okay, so then I guess the question is, what can we do to increase or to recruit more part-timers?
That's, right now, that's where we're, going out and looking for. We actually have 3 individuals that we can start, have a female officer that put in an application. We're gonna go ahead and do the lower board whenever the boards can meet. It is kind of hard right now due to the fact that I have so many departments that are hiring, full-time officers. I have other departments, part-time officers, that are hiring part-time officers at $22, $23 an hour, making more than what our full-time officers make here, starting pay. So because of what happened at the school in Broward, that's why it's opened up. So many other agencies that are hiring so many officers. And they go to the academy, they get paid to go to the academy, and they get started off at 50 grand a year with you.
Okay. did you want to say anything?
The other point I wanted to say, so did you put it to 25 or to 25? Because you just went backwards. You said 20,
25 if you cannot come out on the times that we need you, but if you come out on the times that we need you, because then you're supplementing a full-timer and a part-timer, because that's my goal, is to always have 2 officers per shift, then all you have to do is 20. And it's worked well.
well, Christia, what I ask is, I asked Erwin for the hours that we've paid, the part-timers. And I asked it per quarter for last year and this year. And then last year, there was more part-timers working. So I know you're saying that there's more part-timers working or there's more an incentive, but I'm not seeing it and the dollars as far as what we're paying now, that they're actually coming. So, I'm gonna give you that as well.
Okay.
Because I don't see how if you raise the threshold, it's gonna attract more part-timers to come out. I mean, and I didn't see it when I asked Erwin for the numbers.
Okay.
So, and I don't see it on the schedule. I mean, and it's pretty bleak as far as, the hours that, and if you actually take a look at the, statistics that we just got yesterday, actually, last night, there actually is a tab for part-timers, and there's actually a column where it says donated hours, and you can actually compare year to year, as well that way too.
Okay.
But again, the point is that if you, while we need 2 more full-timers and we're getting 1 for October 1st, it's been budgeted already, and, you know, we're in the talks for hopefully another one, but in the interim, just as we're trying to work, we're asking for the same thing. If there's a way that, you know, shifts can be moved around or doesn't have to be so, I'm trying to find the right word, maybe there may be a little bit more flexibility from the department with regards to coverage, because again, when I look at the schedules, and I compare them, and I mean, unless these schedules are not real, but when I compare a schedule to last year to this year, there was, at least on paper, there was more coverage. And at least from the residents, I heard a lot less last year with regards to there being police officers after than I do now. I mean, now we hear it a lot more, a lot more.
May I? So I think my suggestion to you, Chief, is that take a look, especially on those Wednesdays, I agree, there's no reason why everybody needs to come in at the same time. The 11 to whatever it was on Wednesdays. And you're saying that the shifts are staggered, so it's just to make a conscious effort to ensure that even if people are used to working a certain shift, we may have to get a little uncomfortable and make sure that we're scheduling according to try to, as much as possible, to decrease that gap where you only have one officer. I did hear the concern where we didn't hire Officer Battaglia at the beginning to work nights because of the fact that he didn't have the experience. That would be a concern to me if we did put him in at night, or if he chose, even if he chose the night shift, if he's not getting proper training. So I do believe that whether the days are busier, and I know that I've heard from some of the police officers that the days are sometimes busier and there are a lot of break-ins during the day, our goal, yes, is to have 2 officers at all times. Unfortunately, we're not in a position right now to hire additional officers. But if we can take a look at the schedule, this is not the first time this comes to committee. I mean, we have discussed it. I've looked at it randomly where I noticed that we had 2 people on vacation at the same time. Those are things that we should be avoiding as much as possible, so that there is coverage. And if someone's going on vacation, then the rest of the department should have some flexibility to fill in those extra schedules and not have two people at the same time off. So it's just a matter of just looking at it with the manager, and it is something that if we pull back minutes from this committee meeting, we've discussed it. We've discussed it at least twice since I've been on the council. It's not something we want to continue to discuss, but it is important, and we just want to make sure that we have the right coverage.
If I may,
Yeah.
Mayor? I agree with you, Councilperson Roman, and Mayor and Vice Mayor. The interim chief and I have gone back and forth on different ways that or more creative ways we can draw or attract more police officers. You and I have worked on that as well in terms of providing a take-home vehicle as a possibility, increasing the hourly rate for the part-timers, perhaps doing away with the threshold. We've discussed it. We're always looking for creative ways that may not translate into salaries, or in benefits, but it could be, just something that would make it easier to attract more officers so that we can have that coverage as much as we can. So we're always looking for creative ways. And I did speak with each of you all about perhaps getting a little assessment on what we can do as a small village with a small department, and finding creative ways to deal with our staffing, to deal with our SOPs and those kinds of things. So when you have an opportunity, I'd like your opinions on that as well. But we are always looking for creative ways to increase the police coverage and to serve the community.
How you doing, Intern Chief? Are you finding that I don't know, so I'm just asking. Are you finding that before maybe a year or so ago, when it seemed that we had more coverage, was it that since we had 20 part-timers, that maybe those additional 10 part-timers, did they have more night shifts? Those part-timers, were they covering more of the evening or night shifts so that's not really an issue?
They were covering more of the day.
They were covering.
They were coming out more in the day, on the morning part.
That's a good ask question.
So was it that maybe they were covering more of the day shift, and then some of the individuals you have now on the day shift, were they covering more of the night shifts? Because Yeah, 'cause the full-timers, maybe, because what I'm asking is, because like we said, and the mayor brought it up, and we were saying like maybe like a year or so ago, it seemed that, we didn't have as many, problems, or it seemed that the
Complaints.
schedule was different, or we didn't have as many complaints. And I'm just wondering, what changed? So what I'm hearing the change is, one of the main changes is that we went from 20 part-timers to 10 part-timers. So I'm wondering, if we didn't have as many complaints, were those 10 part-timers covering schedules that made the police more visible at the most prime time during the evening? Is that the problem?
For 2017, I'm looking at the schedule now, we had a total of 14 officers, that were coming out randomly. And more coverage was during the day that they were coming out. And then they were not coming out, and then that's when I had to enforce the policy, and that's when they felt that they needed to go somewhere else.
So is it because you had those extra 10 part-timers, or was it that you were able to make more staggered scheduling? Is maybe that part of the problem? When we did have 20 part-timers, were you able to stagger your scheduling more, where now without those extra 10, you're staggering the scheduling is now, you can't do it as much? Maybe that's part of the issue.
When I give them a schedule like this, and it's blank, these are the full-timers and these are the part-timers. I give it to them and I tell them, okay, tell me where you can come in,
I got you.
okay? And then that way, I know, on this day, I'm gonna have this amount of officers, how many part-timers, how many, and the full-timer. Before it was that they were coming in, and there was 2 or 3 part-timers with the full-timer. Because it's not helping us, I need you to tell me when you can come in and just fill it in, and if they know that I'm not gonna have 2 or 3 part-timers showing up on a Monday or Tuesday. So then that's how it started changing, and then they started, individuals started leaving because they felt that they couldn't do it because they have full-time jobs, and they couldn't actually commit to a day. Because if they commit to the day, it's like a full-timer. You still have to call your supervisor, you still have to let them know that you can come in, but you can make it up another day.
So in your opinion, this is my last question, in your opinion, do you see that there's been a change in the amount of individuals that you have in the evening and nighttime now compared to like a year and a half ago? Do you feel like there were more people working towards the evening and nighttime like a year and a half ago, or
Well,
do you think it's pretty much like the way it's been?
same,
Okay.
it's the same. Now it's just I'm implementing it for sure that I need to see it in black and white when you guys are gonna come out. If you can't, just let us know. Like the full-timers will tell me he has 4 hours to call out. And it lets me know that I have to find a coverage for that. And that's the same way we tell part-timers to do it.
But at the end of the day, shortage of officers maybe is our biggest.
I want to add something, though. No problem. The only part that's not necessarily correct is that you did have Blackwood working till 4 a.m. So there was 2 in the evening last year. And the reason that was is because the part-timers that we did have were working day shifts. So if part-timers are working day shifts, all the full-timers are working the evenings or working the latter shift. So for example, you had Rojas that generally worked 8 to 4 on some days, and then you had Boys Net that either worked all night or all day. So those type of officers that are no longer here allowed for there to be coverage during the day. We usually would have a couple of part-timers, and then in the evening, we always had a Sharp, or then you have the other side, and then you had that twin shift. So there was always, there was a little bit more of an overlap, and the overlap bled into the evening, which is really what I have been trying to get to. If we could just have the overlap bleed more into the evening than what it is right now, which is during the day. But that's how the part-timers helped, is because whenever they came, then the others were shifted it into, to have more coverage late afternoon, evening, and then overnight. Any other questions? So can you and Ronnie, please, see what we can do with the schedule?
Yes, and I have some ideas too. So we're gonna have to work on that, and we'll be doing that first thing next week and a little bit tomorrow. Since her last day is Wednesday during the week.
I have a question. October 1st is less than 2 weeks away, and that's where we have the officer slated for. Has there been, has it been put out there? Has it been posted? Have we received applicants for the full-timer?
No, not yet, but we have gotten some interest, just word of mouth is, people know about it. So we haven't advertised for it, but we will be doing that as well.
Because we already know the process takes 30 to 60 days, so
Yes.
if we haven't done anything, the officer's not going to start until, and then there's FTO and then all of that.
Yeah.
So
So we'll put that.
probably the sooner that we can put it out there as far as there being an opening, which we've talked about for months now. Any other questions? All right. What's on the agenda? That's the last thing on the agenda. Anything else before I open it up to good and welfare? Okay, hearing none, I'm gonna open it up to good and welfare. It's for the audience to come up and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Joanne Pollock. My address is 189 Northwest 80th Street. And I've been listening to conversation about the police officers and stuff like that. And the way I see it, either you need to hire more police officers, you say you don't have the budget. But went to Tallahassee not too long ago and received so much money to get 3 police cars. That money could have been allocated to bringing in more police officers. Was it that you really need the police cars?
You asking me?
I'm asking, do you really need the police cars?
We didn't receive any money from Tallahassee for the police cars. We received $500,000 for a water project a year ago. We received no money. We purchased 5 police cars for the full-timers because they really needed it, because they were jumping the cars and the cars had no AC. But that was purchased by the village.
Okay, the other thing is that you're saying that you need, there's not enough police officers. And I've been in the village for over 30 years. And I see the same amount of police officers that I've seen before, not that many. And I know you've had some to retire. And I heard about the question of merging Miami Shores with the village at once upon a time. Is that something that you don't want to entertain, or that's something that you could entertain to help out the village? Because when I first came before, not so many months ago, you only had 5 full-timers. Do you still have 5 full-timers?
We have 6 plus the interim chief, and we budgeted for 1 more officer effective October 1st.
So, is there a lot of complaints? Because, in my neighborhood, I don't hear about complaints, and we are very close-knit in our area about break-ins and stuff like that. Is there a problem that you, in reference to the police officers not being where they need to be?
Yes?
Well, I haven't heard it. Have you all heard it?
No.
So, I'm just trying to understand, because the whole thing you've been talking about, not enough police officer, you got part-time police officer, and to me, you have the part-timers, you got people that wants to donate hours. If they full-time, they're not gonna donate hours if they're already tired. So you need to bring in, and either you go out there and look for money to pay these officers for us to have in our village, or we maybe need to dismantle the police officer in our village and bring in other, well, the county come in half the time anyway when you need help. And I wouldn't want to see
Yeah.
their jobs gone, but it seems like you don't have the money to pay them, and you're paying these police officers little of nothing.
That's your time.
The only thing, the key thing that I was gonna close on is if we can take a look at the schedule. If the schedules can be looked at where there is more spread out, where it bleeds into the night a little more, that is really, I think, primarily what I was getting at more than anything. Where I see a lot, it's top-heavy, and it just needs to be balanced out a little bit more.
For 3 minutes.
Well, I still think you need
I can't hear you.
She has to talk
Can you
louder.
speak up?
That doesn't, she has to speak up.
Habla,
She's still-
talk really as high
My
as.
name is Inés Gomez Acebo, and I live in 155 Northwest 86th Street. It's the first time I come to a meeting here, I have to say, and for the record, I just want to say I'm absolutely shocked with the disrespect I've seen in the way you spoke to the chief of police. I expect a minimum, no, I'm sorry, I have to say it, I expect a minimum education towards from the people who represent me, and I didn't see it today. I'm shocked. Concerning the police, I've heard you say that we are not in a position to pay, but obviously we need more police, that's for sure. For me, and I think for many of us, the most important thing we have here in El Portal is the police. I work in real estate. Our properties would go like that if we didn't have this fabulous police we have. So we really need to have the best police we can. I went over the budget and I saw a lot of things that made me think, how is it possible we don't have money for the police and we have $6,000 for the council travels. The cell phone from the council goes from 2,000 to 5,000 a year. The retirement from administration went from 9K last year to 24K in this year's budget. The attorney fees went from 57K to 96K. From 2017 to 2018, we have a lobbyist that gets paid 48K. Does the village need a lobbyist, really? I don't know what the lobbyist even does. And we're asking for a mortgage because of FEMA, and we're doing events for $20,000. Really, is it the moment to do events when we have all these things going on? And basically, that's what I wanted to say, and I don't know if you have anything to say.
Thank you. You could say Alderman Finances, please.
I'm Joanne Hennessy, I'm at 269 Northwest 86th Street. I wanted to say, I kind of want to join in, this is my first time at this meeting. I was really shocked at your treatment of the police officers. Some of your arguments to her looking confused, what's that frown on your face, that was unprofessional and uncalled for and very surprising in this I hope that you become the permanent chief, and I think you're doing a great job. If you hire somebody to do a job, you should allow them to do scheduling. You could have some suggestions, but to go through shift by shift in front of we do not need to hear this. And it's up to the chief to do the scheduling. If you have suggestions, make the suggestion and let her do her job. I think this is the best police department. These are the best officers. Every time I run into these guys on the street, I run into them in the middle of the night walking my dogs, and they're always kind and caring. And I live right across the river. I don't hear the gunshots. I'm not that concerned about the people over there. The fact is, here we live in a cocoon. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say. I just think that the police officers are doing a great job. Let them do their job and treat them with respect and keep us safe. Thank you.
I'm Mauro, 520 Northwest 87th Street. I've been here for 3 months. 2 times I have to call the police. First time, a juvenile went into my property, looking for stuff, whatever. The chief herself came to my house, grabbed him, and took him to whatever he needs. They called children and family. They did whatever they had to do. The second time, my neighbor's jet ski got stolen in broad daylight, weekday, like maybe a Wednesday, I don't remember. I had coverage through my surveillance system. I gave it to them. And one question that I had is, first of all, there's an illusion to think that 6 officers are going to do anything. You need to hire more people. I pay $8,000 a year. I'm going to be paying $8,000 a year from this point on. And be glad to see that money going to their wallet, you know? Can you hire a detective? Because, for example, for this crime, the stolen jet ski, that's a protracted investigation. You need to have somebody in there to investigate long-term. When they took the jet ski, the owner of the house was inside the house with the wife and the kids. And this is at 12, or was between 12 and 1 p.m. That's crazy. They took the jet ski, never, you know, and we're not gonna ask these guys, work maybe one person per shift to investigate an incident like that. You need a detective to do that and to work backgrounds. How do you do your backgrounds for the police department and the employees that work here? Who does the background for that? That's usually a detective work. So you need another position, bill it for that. Definitely 100% with them, and thank you too for what you do.
Hi, Marlene Whitaker, 89 Northwest 89th Street. I'm just gonna put it out there. I moved into this village when I was 10 years old. And I left it for 32 years and lived in LA, and I came back 10 years ago after my father passed away, as most of you know. My parents they loved this village. And they also loved the police department, and they knew every one of them, and every one of them knew everyone in this village. The most important and the core backbone of this village, with nothing else, is our police department. Without it, our safety and our property values, forget it. With all due respect, there's wonderful things that this village does. The Halloween party, the this, the that, the whatever. I will not continue. They're lovely. But if we don't have the money to put those in our budget before we have our police officers and a full stock, which should be 12 full-time officers, that's what that calls for. Without until we get that, all those other things, all the lovely little things that we might do, we don't need extra trees. They're beautiful, yes. The Halloween party's wonderful, yes. Talking to the school, it's all wonderful. But without these people, it doesn't matter. So please, forget your budget and make it simple. We don't need hearing all, like they say, all of this, as people would say, just, I don't know, mishgas, as some people might call it. But in the meantime, it's like, it's ridiculous just going on and on and on about stuff that it's fine once we can get our feet on the ground. And another thing, I went back after the FEMA meeting that we had, and I remember something you said, and I thought, I need to really ask about this. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but did you not say that we had 5,500 trees in this village, and that during that time when they were loading the branches that the police had to be there to observe it, and you did too? Because I don't see why that had to be, and I'd like you to clarify that for me.
That was the first 4 days right after Irma. We took out all the emergency debris before we brought in the consulting. And then thereafter, they had the monitors in place.
So you and the police on all the times that.
It was the first 2 days, first 3 days of right after Irma. It wasn't the whole time. No, it was the first few days where we immediately contracted Big Daddies and World Waste. When you are collecting debris, there must be somebody overseeing, because they can say that the truck was 100% full, but there needs to be documentation and signatures that there was.
And the police force needed to be there to do that as well as you.
We don't have staff. I mean, there's nobody else. I just volunteered and
But at the time, you said the police had to be there as well.
well, that was the only staff that was there, and the police officer were on shifts 7 to 7, so the only staff that was here was administration and police, and then I just volunteered.
And again, going back to, and all due respect to you, the manager, why we don't know when to meet. It's like you get a few estimates, and we're in a big bind now because of it. So all I can say is, for my own self and for the safety of all of us, I hope we put our police first and all this other stuff behind until we get what we need safety-wise, and then we can build and have parties.
Ibis Garcia, 500 Northwest 87th Street. The police are probably our biggest resource here that attracts people to this village. I moved in almost 5 years ago, and I used to live in Liberty City. I've lived in Hialeah. I've lived in New York City. I've lived in Orlando. I've literally lived across the country in many locations. But I've fallen in love with the village. Part of the attraction is the community bonds. Part of the attraction is the good police force that we have that is very attentive, that is there when you call them. There are things that have changed since I moved in, and I have noticed shift changes that are rough, because what can I say, I'm a night owl. I'm pretty much up all night. I go to bed 3, 4 in the morning for the most part. I have a habit of constantly looking out the window. It's just part of what I do. I live on the northwest side at the end of the village, so my border is unincorporated Miami-Dade. I'm not surrounded with the shores. I'm not surrounded with pretty much Shorecrest, much of the safer neighborhoods that I would say. I have unincorporated Miami-Dade and of course Little Haiti behind me, which are challenges. I'm happy to see those areas are changing and growing and becoming a lot more community-minded, but it's gonna take a while for crime rates to go down in this town. There's a shortage of police officers all across the board. Unfortunately, the shooting last February has taken a toll on the police themselves. There are not enough police officers or resource officers to go across. Every school needs one, every city needs more. We're a small village. I know that the budget is a big issue, and I'm actually happy to know that the budget workshops I was able to attend and see that the council has done a lot of changes to trim back excess. Maybe there's more that can be done, it's possible. The budgets have been approved and spoken about regularly, and there may be cuts somewhere else. I know they've cut the party budget, I guess as you would call it, back. I've seen things taken out of the budget now that were normal for us to do. I think the art festival is out, and there's certain things that we've seen for the last few years that are no longer there, because there are more important things that are necessary. I do think that we need to find a way to get a little more money to the police, because I do think that it is not safe for anybody in this village to have one officer on shift at any time. We are not in a position or in a city that can allow that. Any number of things happen. What I have noticed is that the shifts need to be assessed. I used to see a police officer in the middle of the night on a regular basis. I did. I would look out my window, I would know there was a police officer there because of where they parked for a certain number of hours, and it's a comfort level to visually see them. But I also know that yesterday I called the office, the non-emergency police number, because I saw a bicycle that was in an odd location. It shouldn't have, it didn't make any sense. It was behind a hedge or around a stop sign at a corner, not on a house property, but on a corner. School was out, I didn't see any kids, I didn't see any humans that belonged to the bicycle. I called to report it because it could have been stolen, it could have belonged to somebody. I wanted somebody to just go by, check it. If it belonged to that house, okay. If it didn't, great, we got a solution. I know there's been a lot of petty thefts as well that happen when people are at work. Unfortunately, there was nobody to answer. I wasn't able to reach anybody because when we only have one officer on shift and that officer is out and there's no way for them to respond, it becomes a challenge. I was never able to report the bicycle. By the time I remembered again, it was 3 hours later. I think it might have been too late. But maybe keep working the budget angle and seeing what else we can trim to possibly then guide more money towards the police department, get a little more bodies in there. Part-timers help, full-timers help. but something to give them a little bit more support, because without them, yeah, this village is not in a good place.
Take home cars.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jay Rivera. I live at 225 Northeast 86th Street. I lived in this community for 15 years. For many of you that are new, this village police department has changed drastically. The officers, I honor them. They've been great. The chief has had a problem with me, and since 2014, we haven't seen eye to eye. Publicly, I'll buy you the soda, but in a community setting, I'll buy you the soda. But one-on-one, you and I have not sat down and talked. I came in here Friday, I asked for you to call me, and thank you, manager, you took my information, but nobody has called me back, okay? No one. I pay the taxes. My money is your salary, chief, not the officers. They've been great. Issue number one, where is the community policing? I haven't seen one cop walk my street, especially the new cops, to introduce themselves. Where are they? To add to that, that new cop that came in July or whatever, Rivera, okay, he stopped me in my driveway for going across 2nd Avenue, immediately gave me a ticket, but he was rude, okay? I don't care about the ticket. I have a clean record and I'm gonna take it to court. But he gave me a ticket in front of my house. He did not give me the warning that this is not to be done. I know I shouldn't have done it, but everybody does it. Everybody goes through 86th Street and Northeast 2nd Avenue, cutting through the 87 traffic light. Everybody speeds through there. Walkers, cars, bicycle. As you can see, I wear no jewelry now, because there's been 2 attempts on me on 86th Street when I walk my dogs. There's been 3 attempts on me at Publix. At Publix, I call Miami Shores, okay? I don't see community policing. I want that. I want to know who our police officers are on our webpage. I see a picture of majority of you, but I don't even know their name. I don't even recognize them. And I know there's been a lot of turnover, and I'm willing to pay more taxes to hire more officers, but I need an accounting, a forensic accounting. And I know somebody has numbers here, but I need forensic accounting. Whatever happened to the dog? We're paying for license, training, food, boarding. Are we?
No, we're not.
No?
I'm paying for food and boarding and rooming. It's coming out of my pocket.
Okay, then I'll take that back. What happened to the Segway?
The Segway broke down and it costs more money to fix it than it is to buy a new one.
Okay, I didn't know. It's not on the webpage. What happened to the bicycles?
Bicycles are there. The only thing is I only have 1 officer on. We need 2 officers, 1 on a unit and 1 on a bicycle. If we don't have 2 officers on, and they also, every single one of us have to be certified. The only 2 oldest officers here is myself and my corporal. Everybody else is new. They all have to go to training on bikes.
So,
And it's a 40-hour course that we have training that we have to take.
okay, what happened to the golf cart?
The golf cart is there.
Is it broken?
No, it's there.
How many people are required to be driving around and in the community?
The red, what is it,
The golf cart.
Yeah,
The golf cart that we had, the red golf cart that we had.
right.
The golf cart needed batteries. We submitted a quote. It was too expensive to fix, so we sold it.
Oh, okay.
Another one.
yeah.
I didn't know.
But we have a green one, and that one is only used for special events, and it's having issues, so it's gonna cost more money to fix it than to us probably getting a new one.
So if we cannot maintain the equipment, why do we even bother having it parked there? Why don't we just get rid of them?
But if you don't mind me saying, that specific vehicle is not considered a golf cart. It's more of a tractor,
Yeah,
and
passengers or anything like
Okay.
that. It's not really meant for them.
No.
Aside from that, it's actually gas, so it's actually safety-wise, it's not really, not
Oh.
something you want on the road.
I was referring to the red one, but now I'm knowing about the green one. Thank you. Code enforcement. Nothing's being done.
Okay, well, that's.
And I know this is not the setting, but I know police officers were doing some code enforcement. I know we're limited on police officers, but the property values in my street are going down with 4 houses. One, year-round hurricane awnings, and that's a city and county issue that you're not supposed to have that. That's a danger to the resident, and that's a danger to our fire department. No one has ever done that. 2, there's about 4 or 5 houses with blue tarps from hurricane and previous that have been torn apart by the wind, and nobody's doing anything. The grass is more than a foot long in some areas, and no one is doing anything. Abandoned cars. I know this is code enforcement, but police officers 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, did code enforcement.
Yes, they did.
Excuse me? I know that the police are short, but if they drive around as a community issue of driving around and seeing who lives there, they would see that the house next door has an abandoned car. And it's not one abandoned car in that parking lot, it's 2. You've been here 30 years.
Why don't we ask what the procedure is about code enforcement throughout here?
If I,
We could all be here for the code enforcement committee. I know.
Bringing up to the policemen, that's not their job.
It is. It was.
There should be a system in place. So what is it? That's the question.
Well, last month I came,
Back in the day, and I've been here for 30 years.
Hold on one second, I got it, I'm sorry, it's out of order, you gotta give me a minute. You have to address us. Jared, you need to address us, and the manager's gonna answer your question on code.
about code enforcement. We have one code enforcement officer who actually writes citations. He's written at least 20 this month alone. We have a lot of repeat violators. If they come out and cut the grass, then we gotta write them up next month because they didn't cut the grass for the entire month. So we continue to do that. We're tracking the bad houses and the repeat offenders. A lot of them have citations against them, but they haven't done the work, such as the roofs. So we're also looking in county programs that we have given them the information so that they can get help from the county to get these roofs fixed. There's a waiting list for that, and they actually have to fill in the paperwork themselves. So we're aware of it. I would love to do a lot more. We have one officer doing that, and he's a full-timer who also does some other responsibilities, but we will continue to work on that and to track it. So I appreciate you
Code
saying that.
enforcement officer sat in the office for 3 weeks.
I-
Did not go out for 3 weeks.
Well, he did
And
go
how
out.
I know that is because I initiated my permits
Okay.
for my 3rd remodeling, and it took 3 to 4 weeks to get them.
Because that code enforcement officer was filling in for the building
Right.
clerk. That was the only reason why he
Right,
was
so we could
grounded.
have brought in a temp while the front desk person was gone and had the code enforcement out there collecting money for us. What happened to the billboard that used to be in that office that would show every house that had a code enforcement issue?
I don't know. That
You've
was
been here
before me.
30 years, remember?
Well, that's an idea. We can,
Change.
well, we can certainly look into a way to
Change.
put that out.
Okay.
Thank you.
A lot of things have changed.
So, police, dogs, and this may fall under police security, it may fall under code enforcement. I walked in today, I see this little brochure. Sherwood Forest Park, is it a park for us or is it a park for dogs? Why am I asking that? There's a resident that has 2 German Shepherds, and they let them out without a leash. And I know we have an ordinance that you must have a leash. Does that fall under code enforcement or does that fall under police? Where is my police? I had options in buying when I bought 15 years ago. Okay? I wear expensive jewelry. That means, and I don't want to brag about what I have, but I can't wear it, and I could have purchased somewhere else, and my family told me to purchase somewhere else, but I've been very fortunate. My house has been protected from day one. And I bought it as an investment to sell when the market went up, but I decided to keep it. And I keep putting money in to raise the value of the community. The houses around me, 3, 4 houses, they all look good, but the rest don't. And I'm not trying to say that those individuals that may not have money cannot do whatever they need to do. But there's been a lot of lack of police communication in this village. And snarky little attitude or facials, and it goes between everybody, needs to stop right now. We're all adults, we're all professional, whether we work or we don't. Our personality follows us. And a lot of you don't know me, but I know there's a reputation, and people will see you in the street. And that's what I need to bring up. This is my citation, okay? I should have got a warning. But it doesn't matter, you need money. I'll pay for it. I'm not, really I'm not. Oh, I will, thank you.
I want to conclude, because I know we have 2 meetings. Anybody else in public? Anybody else in public comments?
I'm going to be very brief. I have my own.
State your name and address for the record, please.
Philip Andronikos. I live on 187th Street, on 87th Street, 147. Okay, what I've heard tonight. I have my own airline. I go to TSA meetings, Homeland Security, FBI, CIA meetings all the time. I have never heard so much antagonism from a committee towards a group of people. Never heard it. I think my suggestion, it's only a suggestion, you should get together and you should work out your personal problems with them, because that's what it is. It's not business, it's not the community, it's your own personal problems, especially you, Mayor. Okay? Sorry. Thank you very much.
Any other public comments? I want to close, we have 2 more meetings. I want to close on saying 2 things, because I heard it in the audience. We had the negotiation for the police union earlier this year, and just so you all know, this was the first year in the negotiations that we gave them the best raises. No, it's not what they deserve, but we did. We even brought to the table, which had always been a no, no, and no, was the police cars. We even came up with an agreement with the attorney so they could take home police cars. We went and we bought them 5 cars. We bought them brand new laptops. And we even talked about a reopener, which we've never even done in the history that I've been here. I say that to say that I believe that this council and the manager has been more generous to the police department, because they did deserve it, than in the years that I had been here. And I had lived through that, and I saw it, and I didn't like it, and I told the manager this. If you sense frustration, is because, first of all, you've all been great, because normally everybody that comes is really mad at us, right? And really mad overall. And you know, we get the calls, we get every single call or text when a resident is really unhappy. No one ever really calls us when they're happy. So when I call the manager and we want answers and we don't get them, and then you all call us and you say we're not doing anything, that's really where the frustration comes from. And it did happen in the last 3 weeks that there was just one thing after the other, and I told the manager, like, enough's enough. Like, I want answers on certain things, and I'm still gonna go back to the one point. No one is saying that, you know, they don't deserve more money. We talk about that all the time. I mean, I can even tell them about the first negotiation that we had to go through with the PBA. But all we're asking for is, I believe that this manager, when it came to the negotiation, when she came to us, everything that they asked for, no, I'm gonna rephrase that, not everything, most of what they wanted We did in that contract. We even closed it and we went back and says, hey, you know what? We'll do a pilot program. You know, you can have the take-home cars. And they didn't do it. My frustration is like, I believe that we've gone this way. If we need a little flexibility until we can hire more police officers, because we do want to, we want to. But until we get there, let's just take a look at the schedule. Because I still go back to the schedule, and I firmly believe that if we take a better look at it, the schedule can have better coverage with what we have. And it's gonna be safer for them and safer for you all. Because there's nothing safe about an officer being by himself predominantly 4 days a week, 9 to 7, and that happens consistently since January. And I believe there's something that we can still do. And the reason that I believe that I harp on it is because that's the officer that has the most arrests, the most citations, the most warnings, and the most, what's the last one? Warnings, violations, and citations. He has the most across the board. He had it when he was a part-timer, and he has it still as a full-timer. So if we're seeing that trend, give him backup. He doesn't have it right now. I hear it through the other police departments that are nearby. So if we can make a sacrifice right now with the department and stretch out the overlap, that is really what I've been asking for. And I really believe that if we do remove our personal issues, I don't know who said that, I do believe that if we remove the personal issues, that can be achieved. And at the end of the day, it's not just a win-win for us, it's for all of us. Because just like you all, I live here too. We all live here. We all own homes here as well. So it's all a win-win. And that's what I've been asking for. And again, every time I see a new officer added on, I still see a night shift by itself. If we can see a change there, that would be, the calls would be less. I mean, I don't hear any of you on Nextdoor, but everybody on Nextdoor is always complaining. If not, they're complaining to one of us that they don't see the coverage. So I'm still gonna go back on that because that's what I've been asking for, and I really believe that if we remove the issues aside, that the coverage can be better at night. Anything else? Any other comments? All right, that concludes our public safety meeting. It is, you might get a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion been made by Councilperson Roman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Nicholson. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourns at 8:17 p.m. Thank you.